Why Christians? Remember, the Soviet Union made a statement that we could control all of our entire population except the Christians. And they had to put them in prison and in gulags. And I remember in 1994, when I was in the CIA, we were ordered into a conference room. We all filed in. There's about 30 of us. And our division chief starts off by saying, now, don't get mad at me. I'm just the messenger. This comes down from the director of the CIA. You can no longer say Merry Christmas in any CIA office space. You cannot have a manger scene on your desk or on your door, or you will face administrative penalties. And the sad part was only 2 of us, our jaws dropped. Like, what? And the CIA was actively against Christians, and they used DEI as a method to suppress them. And I remember it was Christmas Eve, and I walked out. I thought about this, prayed about this overnight, and I said, oh, no, you don't. So I walked out on New Year's Eve, and I turned around to everybody, and I said, good night, and by the way, Merry Christmas. I'm like, there is a line you don't cross. Well, there was an outrage from the CIA populace, and as evil people always do, when they got resistance, they backed off and said, well, never mind, But it has been Christianity, because the Christians are the only ones that will not answer to tyranny. We believe in God and a higher power, and we will not be manipulated by a tyrannical regime. And that's why Christians are despised around the world, including in this previous administration. My goodness. And going back to Obama.
There are a lot of Christians inside federal service. The story you're seeing on the screen is the story that I broke in February of 2023. It spawned multiple congressional investigations. It hit home very directly, not just for traditional Catholics who like Latin Mass, not just for sort of more, more regular Catholics, more sort of pedestrian Catholics. My wife and I don't always go to Latin Mass, but for people who are broadly speaking Christian, and I would actually say it expands even to just people that are conservative in general. The reason the FBI was investigating Latin Mass Catholics in that particular article, and I think this goes exactly to the point you were just talking about there. The reason they investigated them was straightforward. They didn't like their views on abortion, so baby sacrifices to whatever the hell it is, like, feminism and modern ideology. They didn't like the way that children were being treated with gender ideology. So if you have a problem with the way that was going on, then it's your problem. Like, you can't be part of our group. We're going to investigate you for what's called domestic terrorism or racially motivated violent extremism, which is basically white supremacy. They did the same thing about your stance on the border. If you don't think this country should stop an invasion at the southern border, if you thought that there should actually be rules for coming into America, then you're the problem.
Recently on the podcast, we're going to play it coming up later before Carl Seraphin leaves us, saying, listen, when I was at the CIA, he was just talking about like 10 years ago, he'd been there for decades, he said, they called us in, they said, you don't show crosses, you don't show any thing on Christmas, any of it, that's hateful and bad. But you can have all your burqas and everything else. And then he later talked to him and found out the higher-ups why. Well, we keep finding it's Christians that won't go along with the agenda. And so Trump last week said, hey, anybody in a federal agency at their own desk can display their religious iconography. Well, obviously, but I remember 25 years ago in Texas, public schools were saying you can't give Christmas cards out. But no, separation of church and state, people say that's a letter from Jefferson, doesn't exist. No, it does exist in that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. It means government doesn't have a jurisdiction. The government can't tell you to be a Baptist or a Catholic or a Muslim or a Buddhist or a Zoroastrianist or a Satanist or an agnostic, but you can talk about God to whoever you want. Now, if it's during work time, you're supposed to be on a job, that's fine, but at the water cooler, anywhere. You can't sexually harass somebody. You can't, try to get somebody to cook methamphetamine with you. But anything legal, in fact, let's play a clip of the former CIA case officer here. I want to play this now because Kevin Shipp, very respected, because we don't have to believe him. This is on record. And, I told people these stories a long time ago. They were all off record, so I didn't say who. But it was... Mark Dice, like 15 years ago, because I knew the people at the same True TV, and I'd met with some of the same executives. They do that with me. I had a show with Jesse Ventura, I guess 15 years ago too. But they call him in. He's about to do a show with Motley Crue, a conspiracy show. And they said, Mark, we really like you. This is like the #2 executive at the production company for True TV, one of the biggest reality TV shows. And he says, and I've known Mark like 25 years. Mark's not a BSer. And they said, Mark, we want you to pledge allegiance to Lucifer. And Mark says, is this some leftist joke? To like, no, we're serious. Everybody has to do that here. And that's all true that these rock bands and stuff, they like pray over the tapes and stuff. And you're like, that's crazy. No, it's an initiation to see if you'll do it. Like MS-13 does satanic rituals. And people hear this, they go, this is crazy. No, this is real. This is a spiritual battle. So I think it's important at the end of the day before we hit this other news to understand that these initiations and the mafia go kill somebody so they can know you're corrupt, they got dirt on you. That's the old-fashioned Italian mafia. That's like child's play compared to what really goes on. The pedophilia, Epstein. I want to hit the latest on Epstein with Carl Seraphin, but since Carl keeps bringing it up about the targeting of Christians, it's true because for whatever reason, whether it's conservative Catholics who are their main target, because I found some of the most pious people involved, like Mel Gibson, the Fight Against Evil, are Catholics. And I'm non-denominational. I just know you have a relationship with Christ, that's it. So there's Christians that are Protestants, Catholics, whatever. But at the top of these organizations, whether it's the main Protestant groups, the Catholic groups, look at the Protestant groups are all like super hyper Zionists now. Like Christ said, don't go to the Pharisees or the priests for God. You've got to have a relationship with God yourself. The New Agers go, oh, that means you're God. No, the kingdom of heaven is with you, your relationship with God. But this is a real battle between good versus evil.